Hi, welcome to this Expat Life. My name is Amanda Maxime, and as a certified coach, I help high-achieving expats find more fulfillment and happiness in their global lives. Because while life abroad is often amazing, it is not only rainbows and butterflies, as all experienced expats know. In this Expat Life, I open up space for all facets of life abroad and what you can do to thrive in it. And to support you in your personal, professional, and geographic life transitions, I share tips, tell relatable stories, and connect with fellow expats. Whether you've just moved abroad or you are a seasoned expat, this Expat Life is your place to find real understanding and to grow from the inside out. Enjoy the show. Okay, attempt number 2. I had actually recorded this podcast episode already yesterday. I recorded about 40 minutes to only realize that my audio wasn't working, even though I had done a test. I always do a test before I really start recording. And funnily enough, it didn't annoy me at all, even though I had just wasted almost a full hour with nothing left to show for it. Because I realized when I was a diplomat or a civil servant, I was doing a lot of work that went to waste, way more than I have right now as an entrepreneur. So very often as a diplomat, you prepare meetings, you write briefings, you prepare ministers for visits and stuff like that, or talks that they might have with other ministers, or debates, questions that Parliament might ask. And very often, those things actually don't happen. So all that work that went into the preparation just goes to waste. So this is what I realized when I saw that the audio hadn't been recorded yesterday. And I thought, well, it's not too bad. So I am back again with attempt number 2. It should all be working now. I'm joined here by my cat Bobby, who's trying to get on my lap as I record this. And the topic I want to talk about today is how to make the most of a period or a new start somewhere. And this topic became present for me as I realized that September was actually my first real month in the Netherlands of this year. So I spent the first 6 months in Rio de Janeiro. Then I came back. I celebrated a few weeks of summer here. I was working, but not super hard. And then I went for 2 weeks to California. So coming back in, the 3rd week of August, and just before September started, I realized, this is actually my first real working month here. And it also felt like back to school vibes. Quite literally, because I live in front of a pretty noisy primary school. And I could really tell that schools had started again. So I was really into these back to school kind of vibes. And to be honest, I've always had this every year, every September. I get the same feeling that I get in January or in December when a new year is about to start. And this always gives me the sense of a fresh new start, a blank canvas that I can just paint according to my liking. I have a thing for fresh starts. I just love it so much. And this is also, I think, why I am a little bit addicted to moving abroad every time. Because with every move abroad, you get another chance of a fresh new start and you get to build a whole new life again. And of course, you bring yourself wherever you go and you bring your patterns. But to me, a move always means, hey, I get to have another go at it and I can just redesign my life in a way that feels good to me, in a way that I want. So September was not only back to school kind of vibes for me, it was also the first real month after moving back home. And I thought I can easily go back to my routines and the things I have been doing in my life here before I went to Rio. Like everything is waiting for me. My house was here. I've got my rhythm. I've got my neighborhood. Everything has remained the same. And it's just very easy to go back to that context and work from there as if 6 months in Rio had never happened. But with every move, I'm very conscious of like, hey, this also gives me a chance to redesign my life. And even though I had moved back home to something that I know very well, this to me is also a fresh new start. So September really felt like a new period, a new chance back home. And I wanted to make the most of it. And that's what I want to talk about today as well. Like, how can you actually make the most of a fresh new start? Whether that's because of the calendar, September, new year, or because you have just moved somewhere. So in this episode, I want to share 8 quick steps with you that you can take to make the most of it. And it sounds a lot, but it's really pretty simple. And I think the first step or element which is key is that I really make time to pause, reflect, and dream. Because our lives are really so full. And if we don't pay attention, we just continue on this high-speed train. You might have a very demanding career, and occasionally you might make long days. You have your health goals, you want to see friends and family, maybe you have kids to take care of. You want to develop yourself more. And at the end of the day, there's really not so much time left to be intentional about your choices or to zoom out a little bit. And so the first thing that I always do is that I make time. I really set aside time to do a proper reflection and dreaming. So when I came back after California, I also got ill and I was just running behind with everything. And for a full week and a half, I felt like I was just trying to catch up with every aspect of my life. And it would have been so easy to just enter September unaware of that this is also a new period for me and just continue trying to catch up with everything. But I realized it was the start of a new month and I really set aside time. I think I did 2 hours to do some reflection and goal setting, even though I had so many to-dos asking for my attention, because I just know how important this is. So if you are one of these super busy, high-achieving globetrotters with a very full life, but you also want to make the most of a period or maybe just the last months of this year, that's actually something I forgot to mention in the intro. It's not always about a fresh new start. It's also, hey, September, at least to me and to many others, signals the end of the year is approaching. And if you have any yearly goals or you had intentions for 2024, you realize, I only have 4 months left. So the pressure is on. And if you want to make the most of the final months or of a fresh new start, my first advice to you will be to really set aside some time today or this week or next week to pause, to be alone, to really give yourself that solo time and to go inwards for reflection and dreaming. And I'll get to that in a moment. But just intentionally creating some space in your calendar for yourself, for your progress is really key. Then the second step is that I do a proper reflection of the past period. I don't know about you guys, but for me, it is so easy to be forward-looking. I am naturally very, very future-oriented. I always have been. I wasn't aware of this until I did my 9-month coaching training. And compared to others who were more past-oriented, I was super future-oriented, not looking back at all. And this was also confirmed in an online quiz about neurolinguistic programming I did once. So I intentionally also have to look back. I am not someone who looks back and overthinks, if I had only done that, then I would have had XYZ or then that would have been different. I really don't regret any of my past decisions. I know a lot of people struggle with this and they overthink a lot and they fantasize about what it would have been like if they had made a different choice. But I'm really not like that. Anything where I see I made a mistake, I don't regret it. I see it as a super valuable lesson that helps me change my course going forward. I remember I was reading this book by Matt Haig, I think his name is, The Midnight Library. The protagonist gets to live various lives, and the core message basically is that at the end of the day, you're living the right life for you. So it doesn't make sense to think about what life could have been like if you made different choices. At least this is how I remembered the book. And I know for a lot of people, this was like eye-opening. And for me, I just felt like, okay, I kind of knew this. I already lived by this. So I didn't find the book very interesting. But all this to say that I am super future-oriented, and you might be as well. If you're a bit like me, you tend to focus naturally more on the future than looking back to the past. However, we do bring our past with us, and we can't learn much if we don't look back from time to time. So in my case, before I even dream about what's next with a new move or a new period, I really take time to reflect about the past period. So I've mentioned here a couple of times already that I do weekly check-ins, my weekly CEO check-in, I call them. And this is my Monday morning ritual that I've really come to love. It doesn't matter where I am, what's going on for me. I do this every Monday at 9 a.m. And this is when I run a few numbers that are relevant to my business, and I set some goals and action items for myself. And this is also the weekly time I set for myself that I mentioned in the previous step. But before I even run the numbers and I look ahead to my goals, I first look back to the past week and I identify 3 lessons that I learned that week. Just for me to stay in the habit of reflection and bring those lessons consciously with me and not just go forward, but really build on the things I've learned and the things I've achieved in the past. I also have quarterly check-ins with myself where I run different kinds of numbers and I set different kinds of goals. And then I really look back, and I do this mostly with the year. So I do like a year reflection at the end of December every single year, where I go through all the months of that year that has just passed. And I relive some of the core moments of that month, and I really extract a valuable lesson from each month. Because this really helps me to see, okay, what do I want to do differently going forward? In this reflection, I look at what went well and what wasn't working for me. And the things that went well, I want to see if I can do more of them. And the things that weren't working well for me, I try to see if I can let them go. Either I don't do them anymore. Maybe there are some tasks that need to be done so I can delegate them. Maybe I need to let go of people, of certain energy, of certain things in my life, certain habits that are taking my energy more than I realize or that are simply not good for me. And this is part of the foundation that I build my next goals on. So taking time to reflect on the past is super important in making the most of the period that is about to start. The third step, although this is not really a step, it's more an element, is that I'm brutally but lovingly honest with myself. That means honesty about where I made mistakes, what I should let go of, and where I wasn't meeting my needs, for example. And this also comes pretty easily to me because I'm pretty critical of myself. And I know many of you are as well. At least the people that I coach, and I know it's very similar to the people that are listening to this podcast, they have a very strong inner critic. So naturally, they see what they're not doing well, what they did wrong, where they could grow more, where they're not being enough for their own needs or for other people or for their job. And their mind naturally goes there. And it's good to be honest with yourself about this, but please do this in a loving way, not in a harsh, criticizing way. And what is equally important is that you also need to be honest about what you really, really want. Now, the Spice Girls song always comes up in my head when I say what I really, really want. Okay, I'm a millennial. But those big dreams that you might have and small pleasures or guilty pleasures that you crave in your life, you need to be honest about them too. And you might not be, because you might be afraid that people will laugh at those big dreams or those guilty pleasures that you really want. I definitely have been in this position myself when I was still a diplomat. I remember I was boarding a plane with my ex-boyfriend and I told him that I really wanted to quit my job and start my online business. And it had to do something around personal development. But at the time, I wasn't really sure of it yet. And he just laughed at me. He literally laughed at me. And he just said, oh, you're going to become one of these influencers? Like, keep dreaming. It's never going to make you the money that you need. And I was so taken aback by it. And we have since become good friends. So I have forgiven him. But I was so taken aback by it that I stopped sharing that big dream that I had, because I was surrounded by a lot of people for whom it was really important, because we all grew up that way, to have like a prestigious, stable career and to do something with the intellect that you've been given, or the intelligence and the skills that you have. And so to quit that and to create a dream life, basically, for a lot of people that we like, don't be so stupid. You're going to be one of these failing people. And yeah, I stopped sharing that dream. I only shared it with the people that I knew were going to be highly supportive of it. And those weren't in my inner circle right away. Now they are. So if you want to make the most of a new period that is starting, or you want to make the most of the end of this year, you've got to be honest about what you really, really want. Because if you cannot be honest with yourself on this point, then how will you ever expect that your life is going to change towards the life that you're dreaming of? And if you're not honest to yourself about your big dreams and those small guilty pleasures, then how exactly are you making the most of a new period or of the final months of this year? Because then you're making the most of it in a way that doesn't come from yourself. That comes maybe from society or what you think you should be doing. But if you really want to live a more fulfilling life, you've got to be more honest with yourself about what you really want. And let me tell you, ever since I started doing that, my life has changed for the better year after year. And I'm really so happy. Almost every day I wake up so happy getting to live this life. And it wasn't like this when I was a diplomat and living a life that was like laid down for me. So be honest about what you really want. Alrighty, moving on to step number 4. And that is that I do a 360 degrees review. Now, I know this sounds pretty corporate, but it isn't. I just assess all major areas of my life, including the ones that I tend to avoid, don't find very interesting, or think I've got it covered. So what are some of these areas that I'm talking about? I actually identified 8 that I also use in my free guide, The Wheel of Expat Life. And some of these include finances, health, joy, relationships, fulfillment. And I naturally tend to focus on the areas like finances and career and health, and sometimes a little bit less on joy. And this is partly because when I'm under pressure, for example, and I need to get a lot done, I just work harder and I tend to skip doing the things that are just fun and don't have any real productive purpose. Even though I know in the long term, I do need these things to feel good. But in the short term, in daily life, I tend to overlook joy sometimes a little bit. This also happened when I was in Rio. So doing like this really big review of all these areas really helps me to see what might be lacking. Because in daily life, as I said, I might overlook this. And actually, this is an exercise that I do at least a couple times a year. I've been doing it for, I don't know, maybe 8-9 years already. And I don't just do it when I start somewhere new or I move somewhere or it's a new year. I do this quite regularly. And I also like to do this exercise when I feel completely stuck and overwhelmed, because it helps me to zoom out, to be really honest with myself, as I mentioned before, and also objective, because you get to score all these major areas of your life. And it also helps me to feel that I'm actually in the driver's seat of my life and that I do have some control over it. So I really, really love this exercise. And if you want to use this one yourself as well, I've created a free guide around it that is not just about reflecting on your life and scoring it. It goes a bit further about also identifying priorities. If you're interested, you can download it for free using the link in the show notes. And then step number 5. This is my favorite. I teletransport to the future. This is honestly my favorite part of this whole 8-step thing. What I do when I go to my future self is that I really allow myself to see the future as if it were happening right now. So I make it super vivid. And this comes so easily to me because I am a really good daydreamer. Unfortunately, this is a trauma response because when you're a child growing up in a not very nice environment, one way to escape it is to be in your head and fantasize. But even though it's a trauma response, I've made it my favorite skill as an adult. And it has helped me so much in creating my dream life, not just only in my head, but also really physically in the here and now. And I have a pretty vivid imagination. I'm very visual. So for me, this comes also really easily. And I actually start my morning very often this way. Then when I wake up, I've mentioned this before in an episode about my morning rituals. I wake up and I just allow myself a couple more minutes to be in the future. And this is not something that I guide. Like, I don't tell myself it's got to be that moment, it's got to be there or in that situation. I just close my eyes. I imagine I get transported to the future and that I arrive somewhere. And then in my imagination, I open my eyes again and I see where I'm at. And sometimes it's very business related. Sometimes it's about a house or a partner or travel. And sometimes they're all combined. But I just allow anything that comes up to be there. And the future me is always happy and feeling good. And I just soak in everything that I see and everything that I feel. This is really key. So when I feel so good, confident, calm, whatever, I really take that with me to the rest of my day. So just yesterday, I was imagining myself and I felt super calm and confident in my future. And then throughout the day, there was a little bit of overwhelm at some point. And then I just remembered my visualization of that morning and I instantly felt good again. So this is how I also use it throughout the day. And I do this as a regular practice every morning, but I also do it when there's a new year. And I imagine myself at the end of that year, hey, where am I in a year from now? What is going on for me? Or I do it in a bigger way. I really think about like, okay, in 5 years' time, then what is happening for me? What is going on for me? And also when I'm in a transition, I just ask myself, what would be the ideal situation here a few months or years from now? And like I said, I let myself dream. Because this really gives me fantastic clues about what it is that I really, really want. And it tells my brain that it's all possible. Because the brain doesn't really know the difference between what's real and what's your imagination. So if you can feed it with all this good stuff that is all coming your way, your brain starts to believe that this is a possibility for you. And that is a much more empowering state to be in than to be in that inner critical state that gets to run the show subconsciously for so many of us. So after you've done proper reflection and a review, it's time to look at the future. And I don't want you to do this through your rational brain, thinking, okay, I've done this and that before, then a logical step is this in the future, or my goals should be X, Y, Z. I really want you to also really look at it from your imagination, from your intuition. And one way to get there is to do this future self-visualization. Now, you can do it like me. You just close your eyes and you let yourself daydream. If you are a visual thinker, it's probably going to work for you. If it doesn't, another way to help you in this is to listen to audios guiding you to your future self. I actually have one in my course, Touch Base. You can also find a few online, I guess. And if that still doesn't work for you, you can also just write. So I often journal about my future self as well. I write down, okay, it's December 31st, 2025. I look around and I am so grateful for XYZ. I am so happy that blah, blah, blah. I write in the present tense and I just write about what I want in my life a year from now, as if it is already happening. So you can do the same with a specific date, whether it's a year from now or 5 years from now. Just start writing. And that's another really nice way to get yourself in that future that you desire so much. But then there might be a lot that you want. So this is when step number 6 comes in. And that is that you need to set priorities. Personally, because as much as I want it all now, I know that my energy, my time, and my focus are limited. So I've got to make choices, and you probably as well. I'm an entrepreneur, so I have a lot of freedom and autonomy in how I live my life, where, my hours, etc. But most of you have a normal corporate office job. Or maybe you are posted somewhere for another couple of years and you can't move. So somehow you are bound by time, by energy, by location, by possibilities, and you've got to make decisions about what is truly important for you. And how I personally do that is that I take a look at my dream life that I accessed in the previous step, and I look at the 360 degrees review, and then I determine 2 or 3 areas of growth. What is really key here is that I accept the fact that I can't excel in the other areas. So with my quarterly check-ins or yearly check-ins, I always identify 2 or 3 areas that I'm going to focus on. And very often it's related to my business, my health, and usually something that changes all the time. But I also realize that if I focus on 3 areas, I really cannot focus on the others because I'm not Superwoman, unfortunately. But I really accept that. I just accept that that is going to be a 6 out of 10 and not an 8 out of 10. If you've done the Wheel of Expat Life, you know what I'm talking about. And which areas I choose depends on what I want. Usually I pick the areas that I feel the most passionate about. And that also seem pretty achievable because sometimes I feel very passionate about a lot of things and I can't achieve it all. So then I pick the one that feels the biggest to me, the most important. And sometimes that is big enough already. And then the other 1 or 2 are just smaller areas where I can create some smaller wins that even though they're not going to be life-changing, at least I'll get in this winning mindset, or I'll be creating super healthy habits that are going to help me later on. So I always see like, okay, what is an area of growth that can unlock other areas of growth? And if they are not really there, I just look at, okay, what is going to make me feel good in the short term if I can create a win somewhere? So in this step, it's really important that you set your priorities. And then step number 7 is about actually doing something with those priorities. And that is to have clear action items. And the action items that I have are usually not something like, oh, run 6 times this month or start that course that I bought, because they come from a pretty rational goal setting point of view. But my action items are mostly coming from that future image that I just described. So what I do is that I really allow myself to be in the future already, and then looking from that perspective, looking back to see what I have done differently to get there. If you look from your current perspective, your current context, you're very limited in a way by your current framework, how you see the world or how you have been behaving and what you feel is possible for you. And if you can look from your future self who already has everything that you dream of, you get to be more creative. You start to dream bigger. There are new things possible for you. You see ways to get to your goal that you didn't spot before. And it's really key that you stay in that future self while you are looking back to see what you've done differently, because it's so easy to just go back to the present and think from there again, but you really want to stay in that future and then look back. And I don't just look back to see what I've done differently. I also look from my future self at her habits, at what she's doing now, at what she's thinking and believing and saying now, who she is surrounded with. So basically, I ask myself, okay, what does my future self do on a daily basis now? And those things become the foundation for my action list. And honestly, setting action items from that perspective is the fastest way to get to that dream life, to get to that future. Because that future self already has all the things that you desire right now, and they probably have different habits too. So if you can start adopting those habits, you'll likely get the outcome too. So if you dream about running a marathon, for example, it's very easy to come up with this action item of I need to run 4 times every week. It's very based on willpower. But if you first check in with your future self who is super healthy and who runs marathons twice a year, for whom running is super natural and she doesn't even think about canceling her runs, she has those habits locked in. If you simply start doing them, you'll get to your marathon much quicker than if you always have to push yourself to go out for a run even when it's raining and you don't really feel like it. And another example to make this a little bit more concrete, when I was still a diplomat, I knew at some point, okay, I want to become a coach. And I started a coaching training next to my job. And when I wanted to get more into action so that I had a proper business the moment I would quit my job, was that I checked in with my future self and I realized she would naturally be coaching people because she's a coach. So I started doing those things too. I started coaching my friends, even though they sometimes weren't aware of it. I added some extra practice coaches. And that coaching experience then helped me to be a better coach from the moment I started my business. You see that when you start adopting the being of your future self, you naturally start doing the things that are associated with it. And these things will lead to the desired outcome. I also created a website and I got business cards even though I was still a diplomat. And I just started presenting myself a bit more as a coach. And this helped me to take on the desired identity of a coach as well. And it helped me to kickstart my business. So this step is a lot of fun. Check in with your future self, see what he or she is doing in that moment, the daily habits, and see what he or she did differently when they look back to the future, and start doing those things. This is your action item list. And then the last step is key as well, because I've mentioned this high-speed train before. It is so easy to be busy and to slip into your daily routines. I notice this myself all the time as well. When I get busy, I don't want to go to the gym. But if we want to change something about our lives with a new period, with a move abroad, if we want to make the most of a period or of the final years of this year, we have to stay intentional about our actions and our choices. Because if you fall back into the daily routine that you already have, and you do what you always did, you will get what you always got. And so if you want to have a change, a big or a small change in your life, you gotta start doing things differently too. And that is really hard if your days are full and you have no proper time to be mindful of your actions and to be aware of the direction that you're headed towards. And this first step of setting aside time to do reflection and daydreaming and goal setting is really good. It's key. But if you really want to enable a change at the end of the period or through the move, you've got to keep making time and space for it so that you can stay intentional. Because it's intentionality that generates a different outcome. Your subconscious mind is keeping you in a place that you already know. So we have neural pathways in our brain. Our subconscious governs our body, for example, without us having to consciously think of everything. So our body knows how to regulate itself. It knows how to give you signals that you're hungry if you need to eat more, which is currently going on for me. But you also know that when you walk into a room, you know exactly where you have to press the light button to get light in the room. You don't have to actively think about all these things, because if you were to think consciously about all these little choices and systems that are going on, you would go insane. There wouldn't be enough energy in your body to do that. So we've got a subconscious mind that takes care of all those subconscious processes, and a conscious mind to do the conscious work. Like, hey, where do I want to be next year? Should I make a career change? Unfortunately, a lot of the things that we think and that we do are also stored in this subconscious space, things that we want to change. So like I mentioned in the example before, when I'm really busy and overwhelmed, I tend to work harder and I tend to take away the fun stuff in my calendar. But I know consciously that this isn't good for me. But in the heat of the moment and under pressure, I fall back to the subconscious ruling of my system. And if you want to break out of that, you need to bring the subconscious to the conscious to really change that. You need to create new neural pathways in your brain. So your brain has this way like, oh, there's a trigger and there's an automated response that the brain doesn't need to think about. And if you want to create a new response to a trigger, you've got to actively create a new neural pathway. But that takes a lot of practice and repetition for your brain to form this new neural pathway, for you to start doing things differently. And so this is why I say throughout this period, throughout time abroad, you've got to stay mindful of what you're doing, both in like your longer term direction, but also in the small daily decisions. And one way to become more mindful is to actively set time aside for yourself, where you get to go inwards and do some reflection and dreaming and goal setting. So maybe you can also create a monthly or a weekly check-in with yourself. No matter what's going on, you just have that locked in, whether it's the first of the month or every Monday or every Friday to wrap up the week. You know, you've got 20 minutes with yourself and your journal to make time to bring the subconscious more to the conscious and to make intentional choices going forward. All right, those are the 8 steps that I use myself to make the most of a period, whether it's a new calendar period or I move abroad or it's back to school vibes and I want to make the most of the end of the year. This is what I do. And it's so locked into my system now that I don't really need to think about it anymore. And I hope these 8 steps were useful for you too, and that you get started on creating a different outcome for yourself so that you too can live a happier and more fulfilled life wherever you are. And if you want some further guidance in that, I actually have 2 options for you. One is the free guide, The Wheel of Expat Life, that I already mentioned. This is a great 360 degrees review, plus a few extra things that will really help you feel back in the driver's seat of your expat life. And the second one is my live event on the 28th of September in Amsterdam. And this event has like an Indian summer theme where we're going to bring the spaciousness that we felt in summer into the busy autumn. So I don't know about you, but when I'm on holiday and I get out of my daily routine, I really see my life much more clearly and I see what I want differently. So summer or holidays always give me a lot of inspiration about how I want to change my life. But then when I come back, it's busy autumn. The world is demanding. I've had it now as a coach. It's a really busy period. But when I was a diplomat, it was the same thing. And I bet it's valid for you too. It gets so busy that you just fall back to what you already know. Exactly what I was talking about in this episode. And so at the live event, we're going to discover a little bit more what the dream direction for you is, and we're going to see where your blockages lie. And we're going to play around with it because I don't want you to just understand things. I also want to help you see that there's a different way and that you can do something about it. So it's going to be a very fun afternoon on the 28th of September. We're going to do coaching from 1:30 to 5:30. This is done in a small group with a lot of personal attention for everyone. So there will be some personal twist to the coaching exercises. It is not group coaching in that I coach an entire group. You are still an individual, but within a group context. And there will be group exercises. So we'll have 4 hours of coaching and then we'll finish with a drink to cheers to our journey. And this is also such a nice way to meet like-minded people because this event is really for growth-oriented globetrotters who are interested in their personal development and who are open and curious about themselves on a deeper layer. And I gotta say, these are really nice people. I have brought expats together before and friendships have been formed. So I hope that this is also going to be a really nice afternoon where you get to meet new people that instantly just get you. You don't need to explain yourself. We are all on the same page. And if you're interested, hurry and get your ticket because there are only a few left. The investment for the live event is 77 euros, including the drinks. And this is such a nice and unique way to experience my coaching without committing to a full coaching journey, which currently costs 1,500 euros. And the price is going to go up. So if you are curious about how I coach and if you want to meet like-minded people and you want to get to know yourself better so you can move towards that dream life and just feel happier wherever you are, come join us on the 28th of September in Amsterdam. I would love to welcome you. And if you have any questions about it, just send me a DM on Instagram or LinkedIn and I'll reply ASAP. Alrighty, that's it for now. I'm going to have lunch and I wish you a wonderful day wherever you are. Talk soon again.